Hey everybody, Cody Menz here with another video kind of looking into an upcoming Tier 10, not premium, but reward light tank, the LKpz.70 K. Now this tank, as of the World of Tanks 1.22 update, is unreleased here kind of going into the fall of 2023, but it's possible we might see it kind of going into next year for either the assembly shop tank early in the year. Be pretty interesting if they did a light tank, or possibly even they might do a clan war reward tank. I think a little less likely for that since it's a light, or even a reward for some sort of like ranked or competitive mode for next year after the onslaught mode, since that's going to be a version of the CS63 called the Hurricane. In any event, though, new light tank at tier 10, pretty interesting. This tank is very, very, very interesting, to be completely honest. But like before we get into the stats, and the 17 degrees of gun depression, essentially this tank, at least from what Wargaming has in here, is this is 1970 design by Krupp, and they, or Krupp, or however you pronounce it, investigated a possibility of creating a vehicle with the crew of 1 to 3 members. So they were looking into a remote controlled tank without a crew, possibly as well. Essentially, the prototype of this tank was supposed to feature an adjustable hydropneumatic suspension. This tank does have that. It looks like it's going to be an automatic one, where it just goes in and out automatically. And very long rollers for traveling, and basically a high specific power, so very maneuverable. And the main armament was supposed to be a gun with 2-plane stabilization and using a lifting roof over the gun breech. So, the gun pivots a little bit differently than a lot of tanks. It has 10 degrees of gun depression, and then with the suspension, it actually goes up to 17 degrees. Now, I'll show that basically with going into like tanks.gg, which I'll include essentially a link to that when we get to that part of the tank. And the crew was supposed to be located in the rear of the tank and essentially controlled the vehicle using cameras and highly automated remote systems. And basically, it has no armor whatsoever. The maneuverability is supposed to be its protection, and essentially the project was discontinued at the modeling and blueprint stage because they probably thought it was pretty freaking crazy and not worth it at that point. In any event, a pretty interesting tank. So at least the stats here, like how do they stand up, and what could you expect from this tank when it finally comes out at some point, most likely in 2024, maybe even getting into 2025. But I think I guess the highest probability for this tank will probably be one of the 2 assembly shop tanks next year, if they stick to doing that twice a year. Now, this tank, before we get into the nitty-gritty, the armor of this thing, basically non-existent. It's got no armor anywhere at all. We'll just get that out of the way. This thing, like, if you get a bounce on this, then, good luck. You should buy a lottery ticket. And getting into how this tank works, gun depression wise, because it's pretty interesting. Basically, once you go to 10 degrees of gun depression, the tank rocks essentially back and forth. It won't rock side to side. So side to side it doesn't rock, but it does rock back and forth to get that 17 degrees of gun depression. So pretty freaking useful, to where that's a lot of gun depression, to where you're going to basically be able to work off of most hills in the game and a lot of areas that other tanks won't be able to go to. And that works, so like off the back, it's only got 15 degrees of gun depression, which is still a freaking lot. So you're going to be able to do a lot of different things with this tank that other tanks can't. Off to the sides, it's only got the 10 degrees, which is still really good. So that's like one of the more, I guess, unique things about this tank is that hydropneumatic suspension, which I'm assuming will work just at like lower speeds, and essentially it'll go in and out automatically, would be my assumption. Now, This tank has pretty good like soft stats, like on the move. It's not the best for tier 10 lights, but it's better than say like a mana core, so you're not going to get shredded, you know, when it comes to like on the move accuracy penalties. But the two closest tanks, I would say, this sits between kind of the RHM Panzerwagen and the mana core. This is less of a scout and more of a kind of like run and gun, shoot and scoot light tank. So unfortunately for a lot of people, as you might know, those light tanks struggle a little bit in World of Tanks just because the battles are very fast, a lot of maps are small, but it is pretty unique to where, who knows, they might change this before it comes out, but statistically I think it actually looks playable. It looks actually pretty decent, you know, with how it is currently as of 1.22. The gun does 360 damage, so not as low as a Panzerwagen, but you know, it's not great. You know, like it's not the worst at tier 10. You know, obviously Panzerwagen, what T10, you know, those tanks are lower, but it's nothing like a Manicore, a Sheridan, you know, tanks like that. You know, hitting you for 390. You know, so that's one thing to definitely keep an eye out for. You know, this thing, it's just kind of sitting in the middle. Penetration, so same as a Manicore. Premium round, somewhat similar as well. You know, very good shell velocity on both the standard and the premium, and the HE's like your typical HE for the most part. There's nothing really to see too much here when it comes to the other ammunition types. You know, like the HE doesn't have like crazy pen on it. It's got 60 millimeters. It does have decent shell velocity though. So the main thing to see here is so the ridiculous gun depression, 17 degrees, and also the gun elevation at 25 is also really good as well, since the tank can kind of rocket back and forth. So that's really the strength of this tank is, you know, so far the gun looks okay, and then the gun depression, you're going to be able to basically shoot, scoot, go wherever you want when it comes to the terrain. You're not going to be able to tank shots because of your armor, but this thing will be probably one of the most versatile tanks at the high tiers for using terrain to its advantage, especially with having basically no turret. It's just a gun. Aiming time's a little bit long at 2.4. However, your base accuracy is 0.29, and your on-the-move accuracy is not perfect, but it's not bad. So even though the same time's a little long for a light tank, this base accuracy value, once you start adding, you know, equipment and food and, you know, your crew skills, it's going to be laser accurate essentially no RNG when it comes to accuracy, except for penetration. DPM, a little bit low, you know, granted the Panzerwagen's definitely the DPM's decent on this thing, but now that they buffed it, but it is nice to see it's higher than the Manicores. So this definitely, they're playing on your gun more or less having really good gun depression, really good accuracy on this thing. Whereas like the Manicore hits a bit harder, but it has worse accuracy to play off of and lower DPM. So the gun so far on this, I would say it's a win over something like the Manicore. But the difficult thing is, you know, it's how many shots can you actually land? Because a lot of maps are, you know, pretty small, and when you fire you're gonna get spotted, you know, stuff like that. But this thing will be able to hide pretty well, kind of like peeking over the Manicore. It is hard to hit the thing. This thing's gonna be near impossible. Hit points, you know, it sits between the Panzerwagen and Manicore, so that's good for this. 1500 isn't too bad for a tier 10 light. No armor what to speak of. You know, basically you're gonna get shot and you're gonna get penned, but enough to protect you against some HE rounds, which is nice. Now, mobility. This thing isn't, you know, it's not slow. It's a light tank. But specific power is a little weak. You know, it's not too far behind these, but it, you know, it is a little bit less. Top speed is good, and reverse speed, you know, same as them. So this is, you know, where, you know, will this like 2 degrees, or not 2 degrees, 2 kilometers an hour, will be a noticeable difference over the Manicore? Probably not, but it is something to where this thing is one of the faster, you know, light tanks at tier 10, which is definitely good, because this thing is going to be relying on speed and its gun depression and accuracy. Going to the camo, which is really important. You're not beating at the mana core. Like, this thing's not going to be kind of replacing that as kind of your best camouflage V range combo at tier 10. But it's a little bit better than the Panzerwagen, which is nice. It's definitely not going to be useless when it comes to that. What hurts it the most, however, is 390 meters of view range. There's definitely no EBR, which has crap view range, but it's kind of like when you're playing the T10 light tank, which also has low V range. This thing, takes a little bit of a hit, probably because of the gun turret design. They give it a little bit less V range. So while your camouflage is a little bit better, it's not that much better than a Panzerwagen. The Panzerwagen has 30 meters more V range than you. Like, it's going to outspot you. So it's definitely something to where this thing's not going to be a great scout. It's more of kind of a shoot, scoot, run and gun, like little, pest essentially. That's really hard to get rid of if it's able to use its gun depression. So definitely unique gameplay. It's just whether that really translates too well to the game it's another thing, because like, this thing's gonna be really hard to deal with on hills, but is it going to be good enough, because you're not always able to, hide your tank behind, using gun depression like a hill or cover and stuff. But this thing's going to be the best at it, at least as of right now. I think overall, though, most likely we'll see this as like an assembly shop tank, because usually they come out, and this tank statistically I think holds up pretty well against most other tier 10 lights, but it's not better than them. So it kind of fits in line with the last couple assembly shop tanks that we had. I doubt that they would release this as like a clan war reward, stuff like that, because there's another couple tanks that they could do that would fit a little bit better. In any event, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully this has you a little excited for this tank, because it's pretty unique and different versus what we have in the game already. And thanks. Hope I see you around another video. Have a good one.